Hi, this is Angie with Chocolate Sunday Part 6, and it's Wednesday for anybody who checks in weekly. Life's what happens while you're busy making plans. I was using this for a few reasons, and one of them was to finish my book. But there's a saying about, who's going to talk about the elephant on the table. And given that I live in a small rural town in Ireland, and there was a big fracas in my garden on Sunday, I'm sure many people have talked about it, so I'd rather put some perspective and be open about it than have stories made up. It's been my experience with gossip that what people don't know they'll make up, and I'm not making people the enemy, because I think gossip's a human tendency. We can fight against it. I try never to gossip with malice, and I have an inveterate tendency to see the good in things, and I'm trying to discern if that's me being delusional or dysfunctional, or whatever those stupid words are. Like, there's none so blind as them that cannot see. That was one of my mother's sayings. So I'll deal with what happened on Sunday, and then we'll see if I can move on to continuing and finishing the story about inheritances. My dad's 85. The jury's out as to whether he's having early dementia or early Alzheimer's. From observing him daily for the last couple of years, as his mental acuity's been a little bit all over the place, my sense is that it's stress related, that when he's stressed he gets kind of loses his touch with appropriateness and reality and forgets things. But I don't want to ascribe too much to that. I think in some ways Alzheimer's and dementia is just getting lost in your own mind and choosing that over reality. Sometimes it's more appealing. I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I'm very defensive and protective of my dad. I don't want him being diagnosed with something that he doesn't necessarily have. And he's very keen to keep up his driving. He lives 2 miles outside of a small town, and he loves to drive in and out and be able to pick my mum up and drop her off and come visit. And he doesn't drive far these days, but he does like to drive. So for any of you that have followed my notes, some of which go towards my book, there is one called A Tribute to My Father, or The Glory of My Father. Yeah, a tribute. I read a beautiful French book called La Gloire de Mon Père by Marcel Pagnol when I was at school or university. And I think it's a universal experience for people to, unless you come from a very healthy, normal, stable family, if you do look away, but even normal families can have issues with elderly parents. But anyway, I'm conflicted about my father. I love him. I think anybody else who follows my Facebook page knows that I adore him. I adore both my parents. And I would do anything for them, pretty much. And I'm trying not to, even though they're 78 and 85, I'm trying not to be unhealthy about that, because, in many ways they haven't been the best parents in the world. They may have had the best intentions, but I think it's fairly obvious they haven't been the best parents. And I have to watch myself, and the next generation have to watch themselves, my niece, my daughter, that we don't carry on family behaviours that are actually unhealthy. You can choose the good and leave the rest. You can you want to bring a heritage to your children, and I want my children to have their grandparents in their life, and my grandchildren to have their great grandparents in their life. And I'm very aware as well of that, the first commandment with the promise, honour thy father and thy mother, that thy days might be long and that things might go well with thee. So I really walk a tightrope of, how to honour them without being abused, or without undervaluing myself, or without attracting unhealthiness into my life. I've had periods of estrangement with my parents. I periodically cut them off and think, no, they're just bad for me. They just don't value me, and they've played favourites amongst 5 daughters, and they can be hypercritical. My mother's alcoholic. She was sober for 20 years, but she's been back drinking now for 6 years, and that's pretty horrendous to live with, even though I'm mature and struggle with those issues myself now. But even as I emigrated to America, and I thought, right, I'll reinvent myself, I'll have a new life, I won't be defined by my family dynamics. But while I was in America for 5 years, I spent vast amounts of time being homesick and missing them and loving them, and you kind of get the rose-tinted spectacles on. I don't know, I think it's human nature again to remember the good times and kind of just gloss over the stuff that doesn't work. So I had a barbecue Sunday because we've had a heat wave in Ireland, and I'd invited originally my neighbours, a couple of best friends that are neighbours. My boys were home for the weekend. I invited my daughter and my grandkids, and at the last minute I invited my parents too. I just thought, well, why not? I thought they would enjoy it. And my parents had gone away for the weekend to see Maureen O'Hara. She came to Kells, she got honoured, and she came to Kells, and they made a weekend of it. They went off at 4 o'clock on Saturday, and they went to this dinner dance presentation thing with Maureen O'Hara, and stayed the night in the hotel. And then, as far as I knew, they were going to Mass in Kells the next day, and then they were going on to Tattersalls at Fairyhouse to watch my nephew competing. So my dad rang me Sunday lunchtime and said, can you go and feed the dog and let the dog out? I forgot to make arrangements for the dog. And so this was like about 20 hours after they'd left, and the dog was locked in the porch. And the dog had been, my dad bred the dog, a beautiful Springer Spaniel, and then he sold her to my daughter, family rates. I think she gave him €90. And she kept him for a year. And then, for personal reasons, she works full time and she's got 2 kids. She wasn't able to take care of the dog. So and at the same time, my dad had no dogs left, and he's had dogs all his life. So he said he'd love the dog for a pet. And so that was arranged. Gabriella gave him the dog. She didn't ask for the €90 back. She just said, look, Grandad, I'm only too delighted for the dog to be with you. She's a perfect pet. She's house trained. She's lovely. She's gentle. But if you ever don't want her, she's still in my name. She's still my dog. So give her back. And my dad apparently forgot that side of the deal and decided to give the dog to a sister of mine in England, who would have given her a lovely home. I've got a sister who's, she's single, and a dog would definitely be a companion and a friend and get lots of walks and lots of cuddles and probably sleep on the bed. So it would have been a nice life for the dog. But my daughter wasn't happy about the dog going to England. That wasn't the arrangement. So anyway, that's all just background stuff. All I did was, when I got the phone call from my dad Sunday lunchtime saying he'd forgotten the dog since yesterday, I went up and brought the dog to my house. I just thought, well, there's no point just letting the dog run around the house if there's nobody there. because she's nearly got stolen once and she's a bit silly on the road, so she could have got killed. So I brought the dog to my house, fully intending to give Dad back the dog later, with no agenda at all about my daughter and the dog and the drama. I just said to my daughter, if you're not happy for the dog to go to England, you deal with that with Grandad and with Auntie Fiona, and don't put me in the middle. But Dad and Mum turned up, I said between 6:30 and 7. They turned up at 6:15, and Dad was just in a bad mood, and I'd had a beautiful afternoon relaxing. I think the boys were both at the lake, and I was just sitting in the garden listening to music. And I'd lit the barbecue at 5:30, thinking, okay, that's good. If I said 6:37, the barbecue will be well underway. But my dad arrived, and he was like hypercritical, which he gets sometimes, and so do I. And he started saying the barbecue was in the wrong place, and there was a terrible draft, and what was wrong with me that I hadn't done this and I hadn't done that. And I went from being super relaxed and thinking a barbecue with the family was a great idea to actually being hyper, like I sort of jumped between laughing at him and not taking it personally, and then getting neurotic and trying to make him happy, which is a bit of a futile exercise sometimes if Dad's in that kind of a mood. So I was jumping up and down like, here's a fruit cocktail, and here's some garlic bread and some chicken and rice to, until the barbecue's ready, and here's a blanket to keep you warm. I was just kind of jumping through hoops, which I do quite frequently around my dad. And then Gabriella turned up with the grandkids, and then you could see Dad's face brightened a bit, like, oh, it's not just Angie and the boys. Good, this is getting more interesting. I mean, that's in my head. Maybe that's not the truth, but it just felt awkward. It didn't feel like it should. It didn't feel like, come to my home and share some hospitality and feel free to help. It turned into this sort of performing monkey thing where I was clearly failing. And then I'd warned Gabriella, I said, look, you need to discuss this dog situation, because if you don't, the dog's going to be gone to England, and it's no good, shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted. So when we'd eaten, and it wasn't to Dad's satisfaction, I mean, we had a restaurant and he was a chef all his life, so it wasn't perfect, and I admit that. I'd had a few drinks and I was very relaxed, and it wasn't perfect, sorry. And then Trisha turned up, and the kids were kind of relaxing, and it was kind of nice. And then Gabriella said, Grandad, we need to talk about the dog. And he said, no, we won't discuss it. And I think Gabriella was glad to be able to discuss it at my house, because my dad's, what's that term? Well, he's quite an adversary if he's, well, we're afraid of him, basically. If he throws a hissy fit, it's not very pleasant. So I think Gabriella liked it that she was at my house, and Trisha was there, and Sheila was over the wall, and her brothers were there, and so she just said, no, we need to discuss it, Grandad. Saying we won't discuss it is not a solution. And she said, I'm not happy for my dog to go to England. I'm not very happy about the plan for my dog to go to England. And so when he protested not to discuss it, Gabriella insisted, he suddenly just snapped and picked up a cup of coffee and threw it at her. And like, she's his 26-year-old granddaughter. She'd had her 9-month-old baby in her arms moments before, but it was literally like he just flipped. And he started screaming and shouting about, that's my dog, and you can't tell me what to do with my dog, and I'll do whatever I like with my dog, and it's none of your business, and so on. And Gabriella kind of stood firm and said, no, Grandad, it's not your dog, it's my dog. You have my dog as a pet. She's in my name. You've never paid me for her. And that wasn't the arrangement. And so he threw the cup of coffee at her, and then stood up and said he was going to leave, and went to grab the dog. And the dog was scared. And the dog sort of ran to my daughter and her son, who loved the dog from 10 weeks old when Gabriella bought her and house trained her and everything. And he said, my 3-year-old grandson was standing there saying, no, Granddad Horsey, you can't have my dog. You can't have my dog. Don't take my dog, like this. And Gabriella, although she never planned on repossessing the dog, but when she saw her son, freaked out like that, and my dad being so intimidating, she picked up the dog. And then my dad at 85